Tienes magia, energía en tu mente. Te libera como ave, súbete a mi nave. Cultura que cura como un desmadre. Mate, brinca, brinca.
Tonight's
Por
guest,
mi gente,
Genesis
piel canela,
Anguiano.
como la tierra. Resistencia.
Hi everybody, welcome to PsychoSocial's Mental Health Show. My name is Liz Hinojosa and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
And my name's Luis Cornejo, and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we're so excited to have y'all here today joining us for another episode.
And we have a really interesting topic. Our topic is psychedelic healing and journeying with mushrooms. And our guest today is Genesis Anguiano.
Hi!
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Hi Genesis,
I'm
welcome.
excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us and for being here. So we have a few questions for you. I know when Liz introduced this topic, psychedelic healing journey with mushrooms, there were a lot of questions that kind of popped up for us, especially around, the use of psychedelics, right? Because it's something that's becoming more and more popular, and a lot of people are talking about it, and especially in the mental health field. So my first question for you is if you could tell us a little bit about your work with mushrooms and healing journeys.
Yeah, so from when I was really little, I had an affinity for like plants and like making potions, and it always just felt very natural to me. So even, in Mexico, when I would hear family members talking about like, oh, those crazy people who use these, these plants to do healing journeys, I just always knew I wanted to do it. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew I would. And once I was an adult, I started doing my research. I started, getting involved with different healing circles, both family and then also outside of my family, but mainly like within indigenous Mexican culture. Mm-hmm. And then once I, got to grad school, I also kind of started learning about the scientific sides of things, some of the associations like MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. Like they're leading some of the biggest research studies on psychedelics and mushrooms in the country. So I feel like I have experience both like on a personal, cultural level, but then I also want to hear the other side. I want all sides of the chisme, you know? I want to because it's so different. It's so different how it's approached. So yeah, I've explored different substances, different plant medicines with different groups of people.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounds like you definitely have done a lot of work and had a lot of experience. And I'm curious, what you mentioned talking about it from all angles, right? Because there's the cultural, because I know these are indigenous healing medicines, but there's also the other side, right? The more research and the formal stuff that's coming out right now. What are your thoughts on that? Like researching and making it more mainstream rather than, how it's been a cultural medicine for such a long time.
Yeah, I was blessed enough to be able to go to Peru and sit in an ayahuasca ceremony like in 2013 maybe. And the shaman that I was working with told us with such confidence, psychedelics, including like ayahuasca and mushrooms specifically, they want to reach the wider population. They are an energy, an entity, they have their own consciousness, right? And it's something that they are doing. And I feel like I've seen that happening, where it almost feels like they are spreading out to different communities, different people. So it's interesting to see how that, sometimes I feel like we're the messengers for that spreading, So I think it's beautiful on one hand. I think the medicine wants to reach the people. I think that's part of its purpose, for us to journey together, to help each other. And then at the same time, it's always tricky because, sometimes people appropriate these medicines, charge thousands, like if you want to go to Peru or Mexico and sit in a ceremony, some shamans who, they call themselves shamans but don't necessarily have the training, charge thousands for you to do a retreat. So that's where it's tricky. It's like, how do we have a fair consumption that honors the medicine, but then also create access for people who don't have access to those communities.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. Those are big questions, right, that are going to be coming out because of all of this becoming more popular and people investing and putting so much money into having these journeys.
I find it also so interesting because like I think for so long, like indigenous practices, right, were like looked down upon. And it's like now there's this huge interest, which is really great, but then at the same time it's like you're saying, like finding that balance, right? It's almost like I feel like for the longest time indigenous practices had to go underground in order to survive, and now that they're becoming a bit more widely accepted, but then there's appropriation, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Genesis, what are some of the misconceptions about psychedelics that you've heard?
I think the biggest one, overwhelmingly, is like, oh, it's gonna be fun, and I'm gonna heal, and I'm just gonna be reborn, this like butterfly, and wow, it's gonna be amazing. Which can happen. It totally can. But the medicine takes you where you need to go. You can't come and be like, hi, I'd like to go to the heavens, and I'd like to grow, and I'd like to heal. Like, whatever you need to see, whatever you need to experience for your soul to grow, that's what's gonna happen. So I think the misconception is, oh, it's this beautiful healing journey. Yes, that's a part of it, but it's also you're surrendering to the medicine, you know?
I love that. I love that you gave that explanation, because I'm thinking a lot around how a lot of folks often think that healing is this clean, very like beautiful process, but it's super messy, and there's so many different emotions. Of course, like you were saying, those things can be a part of it, and they can definitely be included, right? The beautiful piece, but for the most part, healing is a process, and it definitely goes through its cycle. So I love that you shared that, and I definitely think it's something important that people need to acknowledge and be aware of, that just because you are thinking or considering going on a journey doesn't mean that you're gonna come out, like you said, the mariposa, right? Like all beautiful at first.
You're gonna come out with your hair all messed up, your mascara smeared, and maybe, other stuff.
Transformed. I mean, I'm imagining that it does take time, right? And also, whenever we're talking about healing, there's so many layers to it that you never know what exactly it is that's going to be coming out or happening, or how you process things. So I love that you're saying that really being aware of the expectation versus what it really means to go on these journeys.
And I think also, Genesis, it also really depends on your intention, right? And your state of mind when you're going into that. And I'm thinking also there must be a preparation also, right? That leads into being able to work with the medicine, right?
Definitely. I think setting an intention is the best way you can prepare. And even within that, like an intention that's still fluid, because part of it is being vulnerable and surrendering, right? So like setting an intention, having a focus, and then also being aware of like, I'm coming in humbly to commune with you. Like you are guiding this, I am receiving.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful. And what are some of the benefits of using psychedelics like mushrooms for healing that you know of? Obviously the journey is a part of it, but like you were just clarifying right there, there's always variations and it's different for people, but anything that you feel are benefits?
Yeah, I think one of the, and there are like, the science will say some things, and then the people have their own wisdom. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen with multiple people that I've worked with who've gone through journeys with mushrooms and psychedelics is your energy body, right? Which carries, it's like a memory of your lived experiences, right? Mm-hmm. Your traumas, your childhood, everything is in your memory body. And sometimes even if consciously you set that goal, I want to change, I want to grow, I want to heal, if you're still carrying the energy of those experiences, it's like this backpack that's weighing you down, right? So I think one of the biggest things is it helps those things that have been repressed in your energy body to come out. It just shifts, it kind of like breaks down that structure you had, which allows for so many new things to come out. But again, with that breaking, with the transformation comes all of these things, right? Like things you had repressed or been so used to living with, they come out, you can release them, but you have to process them. So I think that's one of the biggest strengths. Like you'll go further then you would have gone alone, you know? Like I can sit down and say, oh, I'm gonna think about my messed up childhood. But with that, it takes you there.
Yeah.
You know?
And I love that. I'm a big fan of visuals and metaphors, and that whole concept, right, of like a backpack of just holding all these things in your body, storing that memory. I think that's really powerful, and I hope that helps people out there who are considering going through this process and kind of visualizing what exactly it is that happens, right, or how the psychedelics can support you in healing. Now, Liz, I know you had another question that you had specifically wanted to ask.
Maria Sabina is known as to many people. She's basically like the person who popularized mushrooms as indigenous medicine. Like, what are your thoughts about how popular they've become in mainstream culture?
Yeah, I remember when I first read that story of how that happened. It was like a journalist or anthropologist from Life magazine, I think, who went and published this article. And like Life magazine at the time was this big thing, right? So everyone saw it. And the teacher who was, sharing the story with me was like, see, these are some of the ways that these entities, these energies, these medicines work. Like it's these, if they want to come out and manifest out to the world, they'll find ways to do it. Like it's not a coincidence that this journalist was there and just so happened to have this experience. Like this is how it comes out and reaches us, right? So in one sense, I think it's beautiful. I think it's almost like destiny. It's happening. It can't be stopped. It's coming out, right? And then on the other hand, again, we have to think about like appropriation, people not having the right education or expectations or even a proper space held for them to undergo this type of healing. But if the alternative is no healing at all, then I'm kind of like, it might be time for us to collectively be introduced, have that option. I ultimately feel like it's something good, even if it's going to be, something maybe a little bit intense.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I know this was connected to one of the questions we asked at first, right, around how it is becoming more popular. And so you're right. I mean, it definitely is something that can help a lot of people, right, who need it, making it accessible.
I also wanted to mention one more thing too. I think about, right, because healers are also people too, right? And I think for those people that are interested in going on a mushroom healing journey is like really just asking or researching or making sure like that the person that's leading it is an integrity with themselves and integrity with the medicine as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's a big piece too. Like traditionally, the people who lead you through this have had a lifetime of training. They might have been like the second or third person in a lineage to practice this, right? And now you have people who, for example, me, I have a few years of experience with this, but I am by no means an expert. And already people are wanting like, oh, can you hold space? Like there's such a high demand, there's such a need that I think sometimes people feel like they want to step in and help and, in whatever way they can. But we have to be so aware, like you said, that we're in the right integrity, that we've done our own work. And knowing the difference too between I'm sitting for you, I'm holding space for you so you can do the work with the medicine versus I'm leading your journey. That's two very different things. To have someone lead your journey and have someone hold space for your journey.
Absolutely. So to everyone watching out there, all our viewers, just like therapists are not one size fits all, and also not all therapists are good therapists. That's why it's your responsibility to ask questions, right? To also interview folks that you're going to be working with, especially with something as sensitive and powerful as healing. So, if you are considering it, or if you are talking to someone that identifies as a healer that's doing this work, ask questions, right? Their philosophies, their beliefs about the psychedelics and journeys, so that you're informed and you can make a decision on who you want to work with, because that's absolutely true. Like you said, holding space and guiding, these different parts, right? Different pieces of the journey.
And you could also have a negative, or not negative, but what's a better word for it? Like a very difficult journey as well, right? Especially if the person that's leading you is like, doesn't really know what to do, or,
Yeah.
So you have to, so there's like those both sides to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think even somebody who does know, if you have a few people who know what they're doing, you'll still just relate differently to each one, right? You just might really click and feel really safe with one, whereas another one, their energy might feel a little overbearing, you know? So just, I totally agree. Like, use your intuition, do your research, and give yourself time. There's no rush, you know? Like, if it's gonna happen, it'll happen. You'll find the right person.
Absolutely. And healing journeys can be quite expensive. I know you mentioned that already, some of the costs, right, that some people might charge for people to travel and, you know, have to go through the journey and all of these different things. What are your thoughts about people who are charging folks hundreds of dollars for indigenous medicine? I know you gave us a little bit about that, but I'm wondering specifically, like, do you have any thoughts or anything that you want to share about that?
It's so tricky. I think about this a lot because it's like, on the one hand, we live in a world where we need money, right? Like, I can't just pay you the chicken anymore.
I mean, unless you really like chicken.
Yeah, you could.
I'm thinking like I'd probably take some chicken. Yeah, but realistically, we all gotta eat. We all gotta, you know, we all need money. We all got bills to pay.
Yeah, because before, your community would take care of you. You know, it's like, hey, we're not paying you in money, but we're taking care of you. And now our society's so complex. So I, you know, also really providing a safe space. Like, if you are in the jungle, if it's like a full-on center, it takes so many people to make that happen. So that's why it gets expensive versus if you're sitting one-on-one with a person. Yeah. So I honestly, I feel like I can't even have an opinion. I don't own a center myself. I can imagine how much work it is and what a responsibility it is. So in that sense, I understand why they're charging so much. And then on the other hand, I'm like, I wish there was a way to make this more accessible, more affordable. So I don't know. That's a tricky question.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you can share with us, on average, to your knowledge, if you know, like, what it usually would be the cost, right, of a journey. Like, let's say if you didn't travel, but then also if you did travel to one of these places, like, what have you heard around that?
For a sitter, I think average cost could be anywhere from like $600 to $1,200. And people do different things. Some people will, like, you'll come to their space, which is usually more expensive, right? And they'll set it up for you, like, everything is set, including like setting intentions and integration after. Those are two very important pieces. But people do typically charge more because there's a follow-up, there's a preparation.
How long does that take, for example, like from the intention, the journey, and then the integration? Like, as far as, are we talking about like 2 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours? It depends.
I think it really depends on the sitter, on the person leading that journey. Everyone works so differently with the medicine. And that's the thing, there's no right or wrong way, you know? I think also some people come in, they know what they want. They're like, okay, I experienced this in my childhood. I really want to sit with that. Let's do it. And some people are like, I just feel called to do this. I don't know why. So for that person, that conversation might be a few hours. Okay. Whereas with the other one, it might be an hour or so. But I think the integration, the example that, I don't know, resonates with me the most is like, the ceremony is like, if you have hot water and like instant coffee, you're like dumping the coffee in, right? That's the ceremony. Yeah. But the mixing, where it's no longer like water and coffee, it's now a new substance, that takes like months even sometimes, you know? That's just the beginning. That's like, we pressed start when you did the ceremony. But like that mixing, that integrating, sometimes it reverberates like so long after. So, which is cool. It's so exciting too, you know? Yeah.
And you kept mentioning the word sitter, and I know you were distinguishing between like different roles. Sitter, is that specifically someone that is like a guide as well, or is that different? Or because I know you also mentioned someone that would hold space. I don't know. You can explain a little bit.
I think a sitter, you know, at least the people I've worked with and what I'm familiar with, a sitter like sits as in almost like babysits, right? Okay. So I'm setting up the space for you. We can set intentions, you know, depending on the sitter, but really it's like I'm setting up space, holding space for you to undergo your journey. But I am not leading the journey. The medicine is leading the journey. Okay. I'm just keeping an eye over, you know, if there's an emergency, if anything happens, if you need anything, I'm here. But I'm holding space for you in the medicine, right? Okay. Whereas a guide or a shaman, they're actively leading the journey. Okay. They're guiding, you know,
they're a lot more involved.
Way more involved. A lot of the time they'll do like a healing on you, you know, whether it's with roses or singing with songs, right? They're really more of a leader in the journey. A sitter usually sits back and lets the medicine guide you, lets you have your journey, but they're there for support, you know?
So you don't like walk off a cliff or something?
Exactly.
And I'm imagining that's because we were talking about the cost, right? And you said for a sitter it was a specific range. Would a shaman or a guide cost a lot more, or is it either or?
Is it more chickens?
I know, right?
You know what? In my experience, and this is where it's so tricky. In my experience, the shamans who really actually know what they're doing, they're in, you know, usually smaller communities or like rural communities. So it ends up being cheaper. You would think it's more expensive, but because if it's like in Mexico, right, and you're traveling to go to that shaman, it ends up being cheaper. If you're using like a Western center where the center is owned by an American or something, then the cost goes up. But then it's like, how do you find that healer in the hills somewhere if you don't know that they're there?
Yeah, exactly,
you know?
Right? That's what I was thinking, was like, obviously you'd find someone that, you know, does it where it's like sitting, but if I'm going out to like somewhere beautiful, right, in Latin America and finding someone.
You know, I think about like, again, like setting that intention, setting that prayer, right, of like, this is what I'm looking for, and then letting it go, and then when it happens, that's when it's meant to be, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, and you know, we're so happy that you're here talking to us about this. I'm definitely learning a lot, and I'm hoping that people who are watching are also getting some knowledge and wisdom around what it means to go on a journey and some of the things to think about. And we do have one last question that I'm going to turn over to Liz to ask. We're kind of excited about this last one. But
what are your recommendations for folks watching who may be interested or thinking about trying mushrooms for healing?
Okay, my recommendation. If this was my friend and I'm like, okay, look, this is what I have
Give us the scoop. Give us the info, the 411.
I think the biggest thing you can do to set this in motion is to set that intention. And if you feel comfortable praying to the like actual energy, the actual spirit of the plant, like set that intention of, I don't know where, I don't know when, I don't know how, but I would love to commune with you. I trust that it will happen. Start doing your research. There are so many amazing books, so many resources online right now about working with psychedelics in general and just how that journey looks. And educate yourself also about like what the after effect might be, you know, so that you don't feel crazy afterward. Like, what did I do? Now I can't live like a normal human. Like you will adapt. You will have. It's a process, right? Transformation is a process. So just prepare yourself so that when the opportunity arrives, and it will, I guarantee it will. If you set that intention, it will happen. So that when the opportunity arrives, you're ready and you feel safe and you can just give yourself to the experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and also thank you all for watching this episode. And you know, definitely, like I said, think about the intention, right, when you're sharing information about psychedelics, especially if you're a mental health provider. I know that a lot of this is very old indigenous medicine, but it's still new in the sense that it's happening more. It's being received very differently, of course, like Liz mentioned even earlier. You know, when things are westernized, they're valued differently. So paying attention, being mindful of all of these different things. But thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Luis Cornejo, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Liz Hinojosa, also licensed marriage and family therapist. Thank you for watching.
And we'll see y'all next time.